You're listening to the Out of the Box podcast with Timmy, Halisa, and Sinosure.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Box. I'm Halisa, there's Sinosure and Timmy. How are you guys? Let's get into the conversation of today. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. And you? How you doing?
I'm all right. Sinosure, how are you doing?
Sino.
I'm not great.
The Nigeria.
All right, that's also good. Not every Nigerian is great, so you're just part of that statistic. That's good. Today's conversation is going to be about our great country, Nigeria, the greatest country in the world, the giant of Africa. You know, that's actually one question I failed in an exam. There was an exam I was taking when I was in high school. Junior high actually, and I was supposed to get 100, but they asked the question like, "Is Nigeria the giant of Africa?" Middle school, junior secondary school, junior secondary school.
Secondary school, maybe they talk like Nigeria.
Junior secondary school now. Okay, secondary school, JSS in JSS 3 mock exam. They asked this question. I've heard now. I don't hear JSS 3. And the question, it was a mock test, and they asked the question, is Nigeria the giant of Africa? And that was the only question I failed in that exam. I said no. And I failed questions like weird-ass questions about Nigeria. But we're about to talk about the giant of Africa, Nigeria. That's the conversation we're having today. Great.
Yep.
Nigeria.
Yep.
Nigeria, many things happen about, like, Nigeria became a country, right? And I want to quote Sinosure actually. Sinosure, permit me to quote you. I don't know if you quoted someone, but you always said this thing. Nigeria is a country that exists in form and not in substance. Introduce yourself and introduce your thoughts. Why do introduce and expatiate on that?
I guess a lot of people will have their knife on my throat right now if we were to be in person, right? But the issue is the concept of form and not substance is actually something very familiar that a lot of people who read accounting or who had done any accounting class will understand. So literally, when I say Nigeria is in form but does not have any substance to back it, is because for any people really, right, to agree to coexist within a geographical and, let me say, political structure, there needs to be consent. And in my 100-level law class, they taught me that there were some features of a good contract. And one of the features is what they tag consensus ad idem, meeting of the minds, which literally is just saying like, an agreement, which is literally just saying, oh, we have made compromises, we have spoken, we have made compromises, we have reached a point whereby we think, okay, this is a point of equilibrium with respect to negotiation, and then we decide to move forward. And that's that's one of the bases upon which an agreement could be formed. But in our case, anyways, it's not news, especially for those who are close to the country Nigeria or who have read our history at any point in time, that what happened in 1914 was not a set of people, right, agreeing to coexist. It was a few people merging two different societies to form one. It doesn't excuse the fact that these societies have their civilization. It doesn't excuse the fact that this society have their way of doing things. It doesn't excuse a lot of these things. But what it just speaks to is the fact that, okay, you lot, we have hold of you, and then we want to bring you guys together to achieve a goal. Some people will say economic goal. Some people will say, oh, it's sheer altruism. Some people will say that, but the point still remains that the Nigerian people never, under any guise, have a referendum to say, yo, we want to start together. No, there was no history of such. And that's where I said, okay, yeah, we have a geographical entity, but is our soul bounded by a particular goal? No. I have not seen any indication of that. And that's where I stand and why I always profess that, as we are today. We are more bound in form than we are in substance. And there is no substance to our coexistence, simply put. Does that help?
Interesting. Yeah, it does. Even if your question you answered it by yourself, Juro TV should try to answer. I do think our soul is bound to some that location. I mean, we're not trying to go spiritual here. We'll try to make historical references very soon, but let's just try that out.
For me, I would even still reply with a question, right? Are we the only country that did not give consent, like in terms of what Sinoshaw is saying? Are we the only country that's did not give? I would like to ask that.
Okay, nice.
I bet. Yeah, I bet the answers are actually, I mean, they are in the question too. But don't let us keep throwing questions back at each other.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't want to do that. We are not Haruna Kodri. But seriously,
who is Haruna
if we are being
Kodri?
frank,
I just
Haruna
want to.
Kodri is the national tennis champion.
Okay.
You guys don't know stars. Me,
the country,
why do you have to expose us like that? Didn't you see how cool I was? Like, I know the person. You use the context to just
I knew you were trying to play along. Yeah.
Abby. Sorry, you're dealing with uncultured people here.
Do you know how many million people I have just educated with my question? Do you know how I have promoted?
So you pretended not to know. Oh my God, such intellect.
From what they call it, the Ministry of Sports, you give me a check for that plug. I just plugged, let's see, I'm too much.
Please, I know. Sure.
The question you asked me just now, yeah, it's actually a very interesting question. The consent for doing whatsoever it is that was perpetuated or that they did in Africa, and they are still doing anyways, maybe indirectly or directly, was actually earned not in Africa. That is surprising, isn't it? Right? And I think quite a number of us must have heard about the Berlin Conference. When did that hold again? I think it was 1884 thereabout.
Yeah, 1884.
1884. They taught me in government class while I was in high school.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I am saying in essence is the consent to form that those countries called Gold Coast, Rhodesia, is it South Africa now? Yes, South Africa, Ivory Coast, a lot of countries like that, right? The consent was not gotten from African people. I do not like to overflog this because one thing, I think we owe ourselves some level of internal accountability and transparency first before we face these people scaly, right? But the point still remains that this literal right to do all of these things were obtained at the Berlin Conference, where Africa was partitioned. So they started if you want to know the mind of people, I have told you before, Alisa, that one thing that I do practically is to listen to their vocabulary. If you listen to the vocabulary of people, their vocabulary influences how they name things. It influences how they speak about things. For instance, I have said that when Nigerians say rule us, let Tinubu come and rule us, it's a rule as a word is a relic of military dictatorship. But we use it in a democracy anyways. I don't know, maybe you get me. We don't have decrees now. Okay, let me say in form, we do not have decrees. We are supposed to have laws, isn't it? Law made by the representative of the people. But in our case, anyways, that's a different conversation. But in our case in Africa, and how it pertains to how people got the go-ahead to name African countries, to merge African countries, to merge territories and make them one, they didn't get those from Africa. They got it from the Berlin Conference. And in Nigeria, according to history, we learned that it was Niger area, right? And then in Ghana, we heard it was Gold Coast. It portends the fact that they had been mining gold in some areas there. Or perhaps they had seen a large deposit of gold. In Ivory Coast, right? There is a mineral called ivory now, isn't it? Or am I mistaken?
Um, is there?
No, 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 no. There is a
Ghana is
mineral
first.
called ivory. So yeah, yes,
Ivory
I mean,
is ivory not the is the elephant what they call it, oh, is the elephant's white material from elephants
That
tusk.
tusks,
tusk. Okay.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and the teeth of
Okay.
animals.
So it's
So
Oh.
literally
yeah.
more or less like we probably have a high deposit of elephants in Ivory Coast. So
No wonder
now they can
we don't
easily.
have any more. We don't have any more again.
No, I guess we may still have some. I need to get to Ivory Coast one of these days. If they are not going to deprive me of my right to enter, anyways. I don't know what ECOWAS is for, but the message is when you speak to Ivy, it's a derivative of elephant tusk here. And when you realize that they name Ivory Coast that way, how did they name Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe, I think it was Rhodesia something, right? So the literal thing they have done is to own these places in their names or in the names of the economic benefit that that place portends for them. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I mean, this naming of a thing, I want to even ask that question, but it has to be about the recent time we're in now. So, but then let's just keep it to historical references for now before we get to this, current affairs with naming and those things. So, yeah, yeah. So, so okay. I was interested in one portion of like, okay, before I was like, okay, let me go through my history because nowadays any little thing you say online that's related to politics, the next person beside you is going to say you don't know your history. You don't know your history. And I said, okay, let me try to know my history because I've been hearing newer information or newer, should I say, perspective or newer look to the history that we knew before. And I thought, you know what, even the books you've read before, when you hear new perspectives and you go back to read them or when you go back to seek those kind of information, you might end up looking at them from a different perspective or you might end up like digesting them in a different way. So for example, and kind of start seeing things differently too. So before we see nowadays when you look at how Britain entered Africa or entered Nigeria and things like that, you start seeing that it's a lot of the tales from that other side, from the British side. So it looks there were many things that I saw that looked like Britain actually saved Africans that were being sold as slaves, that they were being sold as slaves for before they were selling Africans as slaves and getting European goods. But then when British came in, then British was like, okay, let's substitute these slaves for like palm oil and things like that. So it kind of, there's this messaging out there online, this clear messaging that the slave trade, they were not selling people, instead they were selling palm oil. But the problem then was that people that were in Africa were now made to and undergo a different type of slavery because they had to prepare those palm oil that they will use to exchange for the European goods. But
So
it looked like
are you saying the British did not take slaves? Is that correct?
the thing is the way they came in, it was in the should I say guys in quote, it depends on how you want to say it, but the way they came, the way I saw a lot, that's the thing. Now that I went back to read it, I was like, why does it look so much like the British narrative here? Because there was a lot of information out there. Normally when you go through the first few articles that pop up, sometimes you have to go to like the number 10 or number on Google, so you make sure you're getting articles that are not being pushed by the algorithm. But if you see those first few this thing, they were just showing that when the British came, it was the Brazilians that first took slaves from Africa. The British, they came in, they had to they kind of stopped it a little bit, but then they went for that Berlin conference and the whole thing just became something else. So but it looked
The,
like
the,
kind of
the issue will be that you need to correct the fact that you said Brazilian came to take slaves. Portuguese came to take slaves. The Brazilians never dealt in
okay,
slavery
then
based on the histories we've
maybe I'm
seen. This the record we have. So even the Portuguese were the ones that settled down in some of the places named Brazil today. And then most of the black ones amongst our Brazilian brothers are probably offspring of Africans that were taken as slaves, right? And I mean, there are a lot of conversations around that, but we are trying to speak to the history of Nigeria. I hope we are not digressing.
Yeah, so the history of Nigeria, I feel like you can, categorize it in this pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial era. So you can actually try to look at the pre-colonial era and get why we're here, because we're trying to see why we are here as a dysfunctional Nigeria, right? And if unity is something that we should strive for or not. But understanding that to allow you to maybe understand why we had regional government at some point, and how we progressed into the colonial era, and then post-colonial era, and that's why just went so behind to that slave era. But yeah. I just don't know. I don't know. It's a lot. Let's
You have
just do
got to
it.
know. You have got to know.
So
I feel
it's
like
really
sometimes
it's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. When you were talking about the Berlin Conference, it's really interesting that some group of people sat down somewhere in the world and decided to, this thing where there's something called meat sharing. I don't know if you ever heard of
oh,
it before. So it is like, I think in recent times in Nigeria it got popular when like five families are trying to, they buy one cow and then they just like share it, right? So
Crowd,
that's
crowd,
instead of them,
crowdsourcing.
yeah. So it's really interesting how they sat down somewhere and said, what, this is it. And yeah, but I think maybe after this we should now go back into the history of Nigeria proper. But then while we sit down and fight ourselves, I mean young people, in a bid to have a better Nigeria, some people decided that Omo, if we keep on doing this thing, we are all world powers. So don't let us go and fight in Africa. We kill ourselves here and then we kill ourselves there again. No, let's just have a meeting and then we will just decide how we're going to share it. You take your own part of the meat. Do you like the tongue? Do you like the backside? Do you like the tail? And these guys shared Africa. It's really amazing. And then what I found out from the little that I read is that the US had a right, and I hope I'm correct, but the US had like a right, they reserved the right to accept or decline the conclusions of that conference. Anyways, I think we can go back into we can go back into the history of Nigeria now.
that's the part of the history. Like, is that what did something like that happen?
Yes, he did.
It did.
It did. It's part of the history of the Berlin Conference. The US, had the right to accept or decline, whatever outcome of the, well,
Well, moving away from the Berlin conference, this is depressing. I feel like when you keep thinking about it now that you did this meat sharing thing, I'm just remembering that biology image that you have the cow and then there's like the number one, the labeling on it. I can't get that image off my head now. Like, you say the stomach is, and then the thigh, the head. Oh Lord. Anyways, the Berlin conference
yes.
happened. It's still, and then British was like given the most this thing, right? Britain kind of like took over those areas. That's
You,
Nigeria
you,
and
you need
other.
you need to look at this way. You need to look at the state of mind of a group of people that can sit down and share a continent that is bigger than theirs. I don't know, maybe this makes sense to you. They just
Yeah.
look at the turf, sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa. They look at the turf. Oh, this place is towards the top of Africa, towards the north. Greenfield, along the Sahara desert, down Greenfield, and they just said, "Okay, we want to share everywhere amongst ourselves." Meanwhile, they understood that there were people, or there are people, pardon, in those territories. The old Mali Empire would have been there. The old Oyo Empire would have been there. The Benin Empire would have been there. The old and very prominent Ghana Empire would have been there in that land. We have the Zulus. We have a lot of tribes that are rich in history. Ethiopia. was there in that same Africa that Italy failed to beat at the war. They defeated Italy anyways. That was why they will always tell you, that is why they will always tell you they were never colonized, because Italy was the one that was going to descend upon them. Yeah. So literally, what is the mindset of people who gathered in this kind of place and partitioned the whole of Africa amongst themselves? The mindset is a mindset of superior being. The mindset reeks of something like these people are lower beings. They cannot contend with our show of force and brutality. And then another thing is, we do not want to waste resources, because this is looking to me like a private equity. Oh, don't let me say private equity. Pardon me. like an expedition, and we don't want to be fighting each other over who owns what, because Nigerians are dealt with Portuguese, they are dealt with British guys, they are dealt with a lot of other groups from these territories who are coming to buy palm oil. Don't forget there was a king that opposed them at some point. I think that was King Jaja. And they had to find a way to depose him from the throne and send him on exile, where he died. What were they doing together then? They were selling palm oil amongst themselves. And he felt that how can buyers have this kind of bargaining power where they dictate amounts that Africans will sell their palm oil? And he decided that they are no longer going to deal with them, and that they will centralize their operation so that they can form a form of palm oil cartel that will take on these Europeans. The Europeans came and deposed him, and then of course sent him on exile. So the message is simple. If you want to know their mindset, it's a mindset of superiority, it's a mindset of exploitation, it's a mindset of hunting for economic gain, seen as the industrial revolution. The second one at that point, the first one at that point, was becoming a thing, and they needed input into their production process.
Yeah, and
So
they
that will
had
not
to
bring us
make
back
this
to
administrative this thing, right? Protectorates like Lagos Protectorate, Niger Coast Protectorate, and then which was joined together to be the Southern Protectorate at some point, and then we had the Northern Nigeria, right? So I think I mean, for me, the just interesting things is like how palm oil was like that important. Now I don't even know if Nigeria is exporting palm oil to anywhere. That's just that's just something that crossed my mind anyways.
At the current rate, with the available data, it suggests that our production, right, is still lesser than our consumption. But one important thing is, if you look at it, there are lots of investment going into palm oil production. We have the likes of Okomu Oil, we have the likes of Presco. They are doing very well with respect to upping our production capacity. And that does not add the people who are doing their own subsistence level of palm oil production. Not so
But
mechanized.
outside
You
of
understand?
cooking, do they use palm oil for any other thing? Because I don't think there are any non-African dishes that you use palm oil to make.
I guess we should look at the palm rather than the oil. We do that
Right,
a lot.
right.
Yeah.
Right
The
now
palm
we are
oil-
one dimensional. Nigeria has not hit our mentality to one area. Anyways, true. You're right.
I am looking. Look to me.
Yes.
Alisa
Yeah,
is
it's
asking us now, like, what are the products that we can get from palm tree?
well, it's also used to make butter. It's also used to make a whole lot of stuff, so
Yeah.
it has a lot of uses that besides just the
I guess the point I'm also even trying to establish with this is even before the oil, before the oil, many words are coming to my head, but let me just leave them. Before the oil, we had palm kernel, there was rubber being exported, and actually, something that I think it went on for a long time, even before they discovered oil. So there were other things that Nigerians were depending on, even when we had the regions in the southern region, you would see they had something completely different from the northern region. So that's just what I'm trying to maybe also establish with that.
You have moved away.
Yeah,
from
so
where
just
we
to-
are. You have moved into Nigeria.
yeah, just
We are
to
still
come
in
back on some
colonial
of the
Nigeria.
uses.
Do what you
Just to
were
come back
saying.
on some of the uses, yeah, some of the uses, because we're trying to figure out, why, they were taking this palm oil from Africa. So it was used to do so many things, candles, detergents, lipstick, shampoo, skin moisturizer, soap. I remember, yes, we also use palm oil to do soaps and toothpaste. Is used in, so it has so many applications, even in
Does it make sense
sunscreen.
as well to think? Does it make sense to think uh, palm tree? We also give it palm wine.
Is
Are you
of
Well,
there?
doesn't palm tree give palm wine? I mean,
Yeah, it's
no.
still a product, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
varies, isn't it?
Right.
with
Yeah.
So
the
Yeah.
if
palm
anybody
wine
is
is,
able to get palm products from you, they could get palm kernel as well.
Yeah. But would it grow? Would it grow with their own weather? Well,
No, no,
question
no,
for
no. They are
another.
coming here to take it raw. They are not trying to plant it. Where are the lands?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they are just coming here to pick the raw material and then chip it because it's obviously going to be cheap. Yeah, and then they take it to wherever they want to take it to. And then don't forget, they later came from slaves that we help them plant their own.
and I feel like, oh, but we're getting into so much stuff, but
Detail about it.
I feel like, slavery, like, in terms of like when they stopped taking slaves, I feel like they stop. And I have so many questions about this, because it also has to do with the history of Nigeria. So I feel like they stopped and abolished slavery when they did not need slaves anymore, when slaves were no longer needed, when they had moved on, when they had more machineries to help them out with farming and agriculture. That's when they decided to end slavery, right? And I also
That's a
have another
possibility.
question, and I think I would launch that question on this podcast. And I hope it's still about the history of Nigeria. I want to know: did the people who were selling slaves to the whites, our traditional leaders, did they ever know that our black brothers, our African brothers, were being treated this way? Did they ever care to find out how they were being treated when they took them away? Did they ever
Human
travel to
rights.
those lands on a visit and see how their fellow Africans were being treated? Those questions keep coming back into my head. If anyone knows the history, so that, because it's part of our history, it's part of where we are today. Because this same, for me, I feel like this same ruling class are the same people that have led us from that time even till now. It's their descendants who are still our leaders, who are still our leaders in several capacities. So I just have that question that's been ringing in my head.
Okay, if you ask me,
Now
now
who
who
are
I go ask? But so to be candid, yeah. I guess if any man gets to see um, the detail to this kind of the kind of answer to this kind of question that you share, very importantly. But if you look through this, the Africans that were selling Africans as slaves were hunting interland to get Africans to sell. Some of us who are talking today are descendants of slaves as well. Yeah, you don't get, eh?
descendants of slaves in
Yeah,
Africa? Not even, you know.
yeah. We were enslaved amongst ourselves. So when they say slave trade, that means there must be slave before could be traded. So I'm not sure anybody who caught anyone as a slave is even treating them properly. Of course, there could be exceptions, no doubt, right? To now think they will be bothered about where you were sold to. Uh-uh. I'm not sure that would be a thing. So, so,
Because
so, so practically, we
I
just
know there was slavery in Africa before, even before, we had this European slave trade, right? There was already slavery
yeah,
in Africa, right? But
that's confirmed.
I'm not sure that the kind of treatments, from what was documented, that was, given to some of these slaves that were taken away to other parts of the world. I'm not sure the treatment was similar to the way slaves were treated in Africa, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I don't think that
so
there's enough documentation about how slavery was run in Africa. But then I would want to use, should I say, logic to say that, what was the need for slaves here and what was the need for slaves there? There, they needed to industrialize. They needed to, work on farms. They wanted to do more with people, right? So I want to think that
There is
the,
there is there is history to support the fact that slaves work on farm here as well.
yes, yes, they do work on farms here, but the way I see it, right? Even like the descendants of slaves, like let's say in America now, we see that they were the ones up till today. They keep projecting that there's also record to show that they were heavily invested in building, like let's say the railway system and things like that in America. So I want to think that in Africa there was no that level of need for labor. Yes, there was, like I said, maybe in the beginning that yes, they still needed those people to maybe prepare those those what's it called, palm oil or palm kernel or all those things. But I'm just, this one I didn't read it. It's just, I'm just trying to use my, like, just say, okay, maybe the need for labor was a bit lesser here, so maybe it didn't look like there was maybe harsher conditions. You can share what you maybe know about it though.
let's not also
No,
forget that here slaves were buried with their kings. If you're a
yeah,
king,
same
slave to a
master.
king, yeah, you also be buried when, or some of them might be buried. So
May
so
God
it
just
was
help
a
us.
horrific experience. It was a horrific experience, whether it was in Nigeria, in Africa, or wherever. And I'm not sure anyone
I
would have
don't
been
think we
loved to.
should use a blanket to cover it like that or to create like false equivalence, honestly. Like, but then I can
Yeah,
see
you're
like the
right.
point that, yeah, I can see the point in like trying to say, okay, there was slaves here, there was slaves there, which could even help, in our way of seeing things. So maybe we might like, snap out of a lot of things and, get to work. But yeah, I don't think we should like try to say, okay, especially maybe right now with the information I have, I don't see that the treatment was
Not
completely the
sufficient
same.
enough. It's not sufficient enough. But
Yeah,
to be honest, we need this is something that needs to be probed in terms of especially, like, I really want to know if anybody from Africa, because we do know that some people, I think there was one guy that was sold into slavery and he was returned or something like that. I think he was a royal over here in Africa, and then he was sold into slavery, and then he was returned. And then, so, what happened? Did African leaders ever make any attempt to get their people back? Like, or anyways, let's move on to something else.
If they made effort at getting their people back, Gabriel Jesus will not be playing for Brazil today. They play. Oh.
you need to see my face, but anyways,
And even now,
anyways,
what efforts,
let's move on. Let's
what
move
efforts are being made? Like, even now, what efforts are being made to make sure that, maybe people who want to get back to Africa, who, like, what efforts is Africa making?
Exactly, it's good to put that subject
It's
there. Whatever is
Actually,
Africa
some
making?
people came back. Some people came back, and we have history of the likes of, I mean, like people like GRV, for instance. Their name gives an impression that they probably are returnees. We have people like Doherty. Their names give an impression that their forefathers are probably
GRV
returnees.
Gbadebo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Road
so yeah,
five,
I think a lot of them settled
man.
in Lagos Island. A lot of people,
Yeah,
returnees,
there's a
settled
Brazilian
in
quarter
Lagos.
as well in Lagos Island, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes. I
Right,
even have them in
people
my
that
family
returned
itself.
from Brazil. Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So
See,
it
let's
is
try to
literally the
let's
place
leave
to
this
take that.
slavery. Let,
But it's a big
let's
part. It's a big part of Nigerian history. A
exactly,
very big part of
exactly.
Nigerian history. It deserves
What
one
do you
full episode itself.
what kind of spirit, what kind of idea or mind do you think the people had that time? Because I mean, when we moved on,
Conquest. And it has not changed. The idea is about conquest.
I think I
Directly or
think in
indirectly, it's
I
about
think in the
conquest.
days of old, slavery was normal. I think it was normal because even if you, like, something like, when you look into, you read the Bible and it tells you, slaves, be obedient to your masters. So I think it was normal. In Africa, they had slaves. Our kings had slaves. If you're rich, you have slaves. So it wasn't a strange idea for them to try to sell slaves to the whites. Even though we know that,
Ephesians 6,
yeah.
Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in the sincerity of your heart, as to Christ.
See,
There's a,
see, okay,
there's a
let's put it
problem.
like this, right? Everybody, the everything, if we continue on this trajectory, it might look like, it is just what it is. But that's not what it is, kind of, because it's not completely what it is, right? I think, yes, there are some people that would have, what's this word? Is it what's this thing where they say you have this talent, this person has that talent? What do you call it? Something advantage, unfair advantage. There's always that unfair
Yeah.
advantage that will exist in systems, in people, right? But then it's just at that particular point in time, what is the word prioritizing? Is it prioritizing that unfair advantage of you have power? Then it's just like, okay, the person that doesn't have power is the person that is under. So yeah, since all human beings are not the same, right? It's going to be okay if the world is prioritizing brilliance right now, the brilliant people are going to be the people that are on top, and then the other people will just be like the others, or the people that are beneath them. So yes, yeah, I just think that that's what it is.
Egalitarianism. We need an egalitarian system, right? Even if you are powerful, the weak must not be trampled on. Yeah, there is some level of human dignity that everybody needs to keep the sale going, right?
Have we had
So, I mean,
an attempt to an egalitarian system in let's say in the history of Nigeria, an attempt to uh as egalitarianism as a solution in the Nigerian history? Have we had
I
anything
guess
similar?
in human society generally, attempts have been made, but we've not been able to achieve some level of progress with respect to that. If you want to understand me better, see gender roles amongst cultures, right? It will give you some impression. And don't come to me with that BS of women are meant for this, men are meant for that. No, people get conditioned over history to do one or two things. If you have your child tomorrow, a male child, put them in the kitchen, they'll be good at it. Since they are from their formative years, put them in the kitchen, they'll be good at it. But I think we are digressing a lot, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
and we have yet to get.
pre-colonial era, and that thing can be very deep, so let's just look a little bit at colonial era. And I think what the part I want to highlight with this, of course, colonial era, the British was kind of using an indirect route, they call it. They say they are doing is it association instead of assimilation. They try to make themselves different from the French, because like the French that was like colonizing other parts of Africa was doing deep colonization. I mean, I don't know how different or how more morally correct one is to the other, but the British was practicing the association, that they would be like, okay, let's use your leaders to rule you, and we'll just sit in the background. So I think they were practicing more of that.
So
Or
could that
in
be that?
Nigeria.
Could it be that we Nigerians were so difficult to deal with? Like so they just they didn't want to deal with us. Like, hey, let's select your leader, choose your leader, then we'll deal with your leader. Could it be that?
But that's what we're
Actually,
suffering up
they had,
until now, Avi. That it
they had
seems like
issues with
uh-huh.
they had issues with the economy, um, um, environment, or let me say community or group. People in Borno, right? Is it Borno? I think Borno. There is a particular Kanemi kind of tribe or structure there. They have issues as well in the current northwest of Nigeria. They also have issues in some part of northeast. So what they had to settle for, Islam had gotten there before them,
Right.
right? Yeah, so literally some form of education had existed in those territory, Islamic education before then, right? So what they had to do was use indirect rule in those places where they cannot rightfully, right, rule. But in the southwest, right, they can easily do whatever they want to do as well. But majority of the rulership that they did then was actually indirect. So when you said we want to talk about colonial era, so I was trying to say, okay, what does my sister mean by colonial era? Because I don't understand. When we say pre-colonial, it's usually funny to me because colonialism started even before Berlin Conference. When
So
people
so
usurp
what?
your land, right? People limit colonialism to only political control. No, any form of control, right? Maybe economic, political, they fall under colonialism, or let's just put it as imperialism. But the point is, colonial era was a sad part of our history, right? And then it still persists till today. Although it's starting to wane because the powers that are actually enforcing that, they are losing their grip. And why are they losing their grip? Because the world is taking a new form. Take for instance, there used to be a time when UK is a very big power across the world. Today, they are just that old power that is dying out and doesn't know. Today we talk about America, and America also seems to be losing hold already. We are seeing China, we are seeing Russia. Of course, we could have spoken about USSR, but we are seeing Russia
Yeah.
now, which is one of the component of that old USSR doing their thing as well.
I
But
just want to
Russia was also
highlight too. I want
involved. When we
yeah, yeah.
talk about
That's
Russia, yeah,
like more
sorry,
USSR. I think
yeah.
I want to even like make it known here. I feel like I need to highlight this, that let it be known that it's not as if the colonial masters or the imperialists just like decided to be morally right. It was a lot of things happening in the world, right? That made them it was time. It was time for it to happen. And I think there was nationalist movements too, right? That this Zik movement, there were political parties. There was a lot of things happening in the world in general. It wasn't as if there was a moral this thing. There was a consciousness that just happened in the world, right? That made everybody to just start living. So yeah, keep going. Dorothy, you were about to say something.
Yeah, so like you said, I was gonna say, like, do you feel like the guys of old were more serious about like freedom, liberation, just like you said, like,
This nationalist
the guys,
movement, right? It's a
yeah,
very
do you
big
feel like they're
question,
more
no, honestly.
serious than us nowadays? Because they were all youths in their own time. When the person who moved the motion for independence, I think they said it was 20 something, 20 what, Sino show, I think it was
It's
28,
not
right?
Anthony Enaro.
Yes,
What's
he
his
was
name
that
again?
old when he moved that motion.
Yeah, so literally almost all of them, right? None of them were in their 40s when they were doing all of those things.
Exactly. So do you feel like
So
there was this seriousness at that particular time that we don't really have today?
yeah, there was seriousness, just like there were a lot of saboteurs among them. You know what they did to Kwame Nkrumah for you? You know what parties Mulumba had to face, right? So literally, there were people like that amongst them, but there were also people like so many of our brothers in APC and PDP today who will tell you like, oh, that's not how to view the world. It's just in human history that some people will stay on the right side of it and others on the other side.
Well,
Well, um, yes, I think there was seriousness, but like I sometimes I don't like to feel to. It's not about me liking it or not liking it, but it's just what it is. Honestly, I don't particularly think that the people now are less serious. I feel like, oh, okay, I know that during that time, during that period, like you said, nationalistic movement, right? It was not only Nigeria, they were already uprising everywhere. There was World War II, the world was upside down. Like there was like India was also trying to be independent, and African people, they were able to go out, get educated, and they saw that there were movement, and they were also able to see that the white people can also die. So I think that there was a lot that was happening in the world at that time that gave them that
that sounds
courage.
funny. That sounds funny when you say the white people can also die.
I mean, there was a lot that was happening. Honestly, they saw what India was doing too. They saw other countries, and they thought, okay, they could also bring those ideas. But I feel like sometimes, when there are lesser people with all of the great ideas in the world, and they people just see them and follow them, then they might easily move towards a goal. But now everybody is abroad, though. Everybody is exposed. But everybody just have opinions anyway. We might be, digressing a little bit.
So
Yeah,
before this colonial era, and before so much of like Western interference, how exactly were we living? Because when we talk about Nigeria and the history of Nigeria and everything, a whole lot of people blame most of our problems on like the West. But how were we living? What were the successes that we had? And besides the success, because I know that majority of our successes that were being celebrated were doing agriculture, we were good in arts and all those things. But how exactly were we living? How exactly were we, before we come up here and say, oh, Berlin Conference that divided us, this, that, how exactly was the interaction between the many tribes in Nigeria? How exactly were they living? How exactly were they faring? And what would it have looked like if there was no Western interference? If these Europeans never came to Africa or to Nigeria, like what would it have looked like? Will we be where we are today? That's one question that I also have to ask. What was the rate of our development? How were we? You see, there are so many questions, that I have, right? How were we updating some of the practices, some of the traditional practices that we were actually doing at the time? Some of them which were good, some of them which were not so great, some of them which might be considered barbaric with the kind of knowledge that we have today, right? How were we doing this? And okay, I think I've asked too many questions. Halisa, do you want
we had a
chip?
life. We had a
What kind
life.
of life?
We were living it. We were living it the best way possible, offering human beings to God, trading in slaves amongst ourselves, trading
This
in
guy,
cash
did
and
you just say
foodstuffs.
did you just say offering human beings to God?
Yeah, now
Yeah,
my people
yeah.
were being offered to gods. Now, Egyptian people were being offered to gods. It's not something we can
Was it
ponder
was it
about. It's our
something was it
history.
peculiar to the Jesha people? Were you
It's
guys
not
like
just about
more?
better people.
Yeah.
One, yeah, I think this one I've not confirmed, but I will check. Anybody who's listening could as well check. The Jebu people confirm, and you might see something. Any people that majority of the people that were captured were brought into the settlement where these people were domiciled at that point, right? If they were not working on plantation, they were probably being offered to Osha, right? And in my case, they will say Ije Osha, which literally translates to the fact that we are a meal for the gods. We were,
So like you
right?
guys, the gods like the
And when
taste
you look
of
at it
you
very
guys.
well, if you see any Egyptian person
Wait, are we
speaking,
only
right? Of course,
highlighting
we are free
those
now. We are
type of
free. The
ways
only
of
thing we probably are
living? I
fighting
mean,
is the recent
okay.
imperialism. Yeah, you
It's,
understand.
it's the
So the
same
point,
thing. Like
the
it's the
point
same
is,
thing
when you
that
see any
when you talk about
Egyptian
Western
person being
interference in
eulogized, you
Africa
will
and
hear things
everything,
like
you don't
Eruowa.
cite the good. You only cite
Eru means
the
slave in Yoruba.
yeah. So
E-
go ahead, Sanusi.
the-
I'm learning a lot from you.
So when you look at this, first know yourself first. If you know yourself, some of you will be surprised, right? So you'll be humble. So the point is,
no, I mean, we need like a humility, this thing, all of us, so that will be poured on
and
our
then
heads.
it will probably even set your mind right in fighting this global imperialism.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We need a
you
very
will know that you are not to
objective,
blame anybody.
yeah.
You are just to
So
ensure that you do not
yeah.
continue to be enslaved
But I love what
economically.
you were saying, Sinosho. You were giving us some history before. Who kidnapped your people? And I
I don't know
need
where they took
more.
them from. We have a lot of our history here. But the
Yes.
point is, if they had been documented, it would have been better. Well, you see, I used to tell people, when you say Yoruba nation, I used to laugh. You know why I laugh? Because there are so many people, that if they trace their history, they will tell you they are not Yoruba. But you know what they used to, as a cloak to cover people's face? They will tell you we are all Omo Odua. No, we are not. Dude, we are not. And you
That's
know, why?
descendant of Odudua.
Yeah, Omo Odua, like these children of Odua. But
Yeah.
dude, we are not. We are literally not. Right? But we have decided to take that mantle of Yoruba
Well,
people.
This
Because
is
even the Yoruba
That's
name, there are historical
that's for our
accounts that
audience to
shows that
decode
that's not the
and
name of
for
Yoruba
us
people
to
of
take
today.
in.
Right? So we
that's why
took that
I was saying
umbrella.
that's why I was saying that how exactly were we living? Let's try and
I was telling you now, Shebi, I told you that we were killing each other, offering each other to gods,
yeah.
taking
So
each other's
we
land,
need to
right?
we need
Expanding
to
territory,
yes
and
we
then
need to
we
like go
expanded
back into
territory
how exactly we were living. Like
we expanded territory up to Dahomey in Togo. Present, is it Dahomey? No, I think we expanded territory up to Togo, right? Crossing Dahomey amongst all other places. So the message is now like, okay, simply put, we have history, a rich history of both good and evil. Yeah, history of people that went to war and fought to defend us. History of people that did not have to go to war, but they went to war because they want more land or they want something that somebody had on their land. So when you say European incursion into Africa, you may need to take some time, some chill pill, relax. It doesn't mean it's not wrong, and learn that your people had probably even done the same in the past. So I was saying something
exactly.
about the Jisha people. Yeah, maybe we are going to have a whole conversation about it. I'm still
The
trying to read
concept of
some about
greed
Tony
exists
Falola's book
regardless. I think
on
that
the
everybody
Nigerian
will be
history. I
greedy
want to
for
see maybe I
land, and
can
I
find
think
some
it's a
things around
human
this there.
instinct. Like,
So the issue is,
lions, they want. Yeah.
hello. So
We need to have a whole conversation
Yeah.
about this.
Anyways,
We do.
we need to probe further
okay.
and have a whole conversation. And let me tell you something. Eh? Any place where you see Yoruba people speaking a language that is not pure Oyo Yoruba, pure Ile-Ife's Yoruba, probe their history. They probably were settlers, brought there as settlers or as slaves. I am telling you this. Or perhaps they came by themselves looking for economic opportunity, they settled, and then they get acculturated. Yeah? It doesn't mean all of them are slaves. But some people
Yeah, I feel like
were
we're hearing a
colonized.
lot of the southwestern history today. It would have been fair if we would be able to hear the southeast or the northern parts on. But yesterday we're
The
having a
Southeast is from
conversation.
they are not they are from Israel.
Okay. Yeah, yesterday we were having a conversation and we all actually like had this should I say we had a eureka moment, right? We had got to learn about where the red cap came from. We just learned about a lot of things. So it's interesting that we need to know our history honestly, very from a very objective perspective. So we'll be able to like let go of some things and like try to admit some other things and move on honestly,
Maybe you
because
want
that's the point.
maybe you want to start like me though. You may want to
How did
start
you
like me.
start?
Just call dad and tell him to read your eulogy for you. Right? Let him eulogize you. Right? And when he's talking, record it. When he's done recording it in your language, pick them apart. Look at the details of your eulogy. They will tell you some of your story. We have oral history in Africa. They will tell some people, Akani Ogun, Omo Kini kan ṣe nǹkan kan. Akani Ogun is more or less like Omo Kini kan ṣe nǹkan kan is more or less like the child of some. So they are telling you where you are from. Some of us they will say Omo nǹkan kan, Omo Kini kan Alade something. It just speaks to the fact
Yeah,
that they are telling you your ancestry. Listen, that's where the story is.
exactly.
When you listen
Listen,
closely, that's the
honestly.
story.
Yeah, when they'll tell you
So
you cannot marry from this place or you cannot go to this place, or and then they'll greet you like all those little things. I think if you start picking up those cues, I guess you have to like be intentional to like pick them up and know exactly what they are trying to do and ask questions. Honestly, ask questions, I guess.
I guess most of us don't do. We don't ask questions, really. We have not even gone into the full post-colonial history of Nigeria.
Right, the coups, the multiple coups. That, you know what? See, okay, let's see. right from the Nigerian that era of the Berlin Conference up until our independence, I feel like it's even less scary than when after our independence up until today. It seems like there's more things that have happened and more events that have happened that had led to a very dysfunctional Nigeria, or should I say a functionally dysfunctional Nigeria, that it's even something that I'm treading carefully to get into.
And I don't know why we don't have movies about this. Like the events that happened from 1960. In fact, the events that happened before 1960 is a whole, it's a whole what they call those things again, thriller movie, right? But you see these events that happened from 1960 up until 1999. They can be over over 500 movies can be made about it, and it will make so much sense. And I don't know why we're not tapping into that, trying to tell. I think there's been one or two, but a lot of stories.
The beautiful quote about the piper and the tune. If anybody is going to tell any story, right? I mean, if you see anybody telling any story in a movie, check the person who is sponsoring that movie. Check the editor. Check the producer. Their biases are there. Right? For instance, the things I will say about my tribe, yeah? Some people will come and say, oh, Owa Obokun is the father of Ijesha people. He's not my father. He's a son of the throne in Leife. He's a colonialist, just like the Oyibo people. Is there a word like colonialist? He actually had my people in a chokehold and he was governing over them. Yeah? So the point is, Yoruba culture pervaded that space, right? And then our Yoruba language became a prominent thing there. And then my people started speaking a variant of Yoruba language that if you hear me speaking now, you will hear me, but you cannot recreate it if you are not one of us. So it is the case that there is a lot of stories to be told, right? And look at that. One funny thing is when you know Nigeria very well, yeah, immediately you get to Oshu, Ilesha, yeah, and you are going that way towards Akure, towards Owo, towards till you get to these people in Edo, Akoko Edo, right? Before you now start touching on Edo State fully, yeah, you will find some very impressive thing. All of them speak a different variant of Yoruba to the one they speak in Ile-Ife and Oyo. So that might be a line of conquest being shown to you in broad daylight. People defeated. How? It might not be in battle. It might just be in the case that they had their rulership usurped and then the language completely obliterated. So much that they took Yoruba on, but till today they have failed to completely capture Yoruba the way the people in Oyo and Ile-Ife will say it. And when you look a little bit back from Ile-Ife towards Ibadan, the languages Yorubas are clearer. When you look towards Egba, right, which is almost like Eastern Yoruba land now, the way I would like to put it, Egba, Ijebu, Awori, you will see that the Yorubas are not clear. Why is it that the center of everything like Ibadan, Oyo, right, Ile-Ife, Ede, Oshogbo, Ikire, and all of these places, why is it that they are the ones that their Yorubas are clear? See, let's speak to Nigeria.
Yeah. I mean, Yoruba is part of Nigeria, right? In Yoruba, that's why you see a lot of people talk about Yoruba nation, right? Because it's a very, you can't talk about Nigeria without Yoruba. I mean, so I think that we've done a little bit of justice to the evolution of Nigeria, or the territory that is run, or that has become Nigeria of today. Let's quickly just have anyways, I think the moral lesson is listen, read, and maybe just let your ego go and objectively look at a little part of history, like the the colonial era of history. You can't really let it go without understanding, So just looking at that would be very good for a lot of people. You will be rounding up this particular episode here. Join us to continue on the next episode. Can you guys, are you there, Timmy and Show?
I am
Yeah,
here.
so
Like I know.
it's been a very interesting one. Me personally, I usually run away from Nigerian history because there's a whole lot of headache, and a whole lot of
Okay.
things that have
Thank you. Thank you.
happened.
Well done. We've heard.
Yeah, but yeah, so
All
we'll
right.
have more conversation about this and possibly get to learn more.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Join us for our next episode.
Me, I will not say bye bye, Abby.
Yeah, you've just said it now.
No, 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 no. Just come. I just wanted to tell this to our listeners so they will know that the colonial masters they have not left. They left with us. They are house Negroes. They are still governing us till today. That's why they don't want you to vote. But we get there later. Have a good day. Good time. Cheers.